The reason they like reading my stuff is that I've always got real life examples to prove what I'm saying.
There's a lot of good people that listen to this podcast.
Other than God and my family, deer hunting would be next in line on my list of priorities.
From the bottom of our hearts, it's just fantastic and awesome to have the support that you guys are getting.
People ask me about expandable broadheads and love swings.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to the Chasing Giants podcast, episode 179. It's July 23rd, 2023. We are coming at you late on Sunday night. Don, you've rolled in from wedding weekend in northern Ohio or northern Indiana. And I tell you, before you give us an update about this wedding, we need to stick to recording on Friday or Saturday night, because once we try to record after I've worked my tail off all weekend, I'm tired. I'm ready to go to bed.
Well, I agree with that 100%. And to be honest, I meant to get a hold of you to record Thursday night because I left Friday for Indiana and totally slipped my mind until I was on the road headed to Indiana. It's like, oh man, I forgot the podcast. But we'll try to do better.
Yeah, it's just so busy for us right now, with a lot of traveling and a lot of projects. But before we get too far along, I want to hear a little bit about our friend Leon's wedding that you traveled to northern Indiana for.
Yeah, Leon Miller, he's one of the guys that started Tag Out, him and Derek Burkholder. And Leon had a girlfriend for some time, Katie. I met her some time back, and as well as Leon, and became pretty good friends with Leon over the years. And he's been a big supporter of Real World. They are exclusive, to Real World, and not only as a distributor up there in northern Indiana, but the Tag Out group plants a lot of food plots for other people, and they've been big supporters. But held events. They are big in promoting that show in Shipshewana, that outdoor show. And that's where I actually met Leon years ago. And he was just a young pup at the time. I bet he was only about 17 years old, maybe. And I had a booth there. I was speaking there that year, and this kid just kept coming up to my booth and telling me what he's going to do. I'm going to do this. I'm starting this company. I'm going to, clear food plots for people. I'm going to plant food plots. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And by the time the weekend was over, that show was over, I believed him because I could just see the passion that the guy had. And it's one thing to sit in a booth and have somebody come by once or twice and talk to you. But this guy, he must have been at my booth 10 times or more during that show. And I knew what it was, that he was going to do something with his life. And anyway, he got engaged here earlier this year. And before he would set the wedding date, he made sure that it was a date that was good for me. And I felt really honored that he would think so much of me to make sure that I could be there. And of course, Robin and I went, and it was just a great time. Met with a lot of old friends seen there, and the new owners of Real World. Some of them, there's multiple new owners. We got Dwayne and Janice who are there at the facility every day, but we also got some folks from the northern Indiana area that have bought in as well, and all those folks were at this wedding. So I just, I said many times that the best thing that deer hunting ever did for me was the people that it brought into my life and the friends I've made. And you're a perfect example too, Terry. Deer hunting is what brought us together. And it was the same way for Leon and Katie. And it was just an awesome day for a wedding. The weather was perfect, and the setting was absolutely fantastic. There was a bean field. It was held at this country facility that was just awesome. I think it was basically made for wedding type events. And right outside the back door was this bean field that butted up against the woods on the far side. And when I left right before dark, there was a group of people standing outside the door looking at this group of probably, I don't know, 8 or 10 deer feeding out in that soybean field yesterday evening. So it was a great time, and definitely wish Leon and Katie all the best.
Yeah, Leon's a huge supporter, and I want to tell you what, him and his partners up there are go-getters. They're not going to let the grass not grow underneath their feet, buddy. They are going all the time. What I especially like about that group is how much they also give back to their community and help with charity. We mentioned it last week, but they're actually that some of that group is actually the one hosting this big charity event on September 12th that I'm speaking at up in Napanee. And it's not just about making money for these people. They are taking care of widows, sick people in their communities. They're doing it the right way. And it's just another example of good people that God's blessed with a successful business. I can't be more proud of a young person that's busted their rear end as much as those guys have and been successful at it.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about that wedding, there was a really diverse group of people there. Leon grew up Amish, as did Katie, and there was a lot of Amish folks there, but there was folks from other states, and of course I was probably the weirdo in the bunch. But Leon has a gift of making everyone feel special, and even though it was his day and the attention was on him, he was working the crowd, making sure everybody felt comfortable. And I joked with him that whenever we was going through the line, at the end of the wedding, I said I was expecting to have Dr. Pepper and cheeseburgers at this event because I don't know if you remember, but last winter when I stayed at his place, he got up at like 4 a.m. to cook me cheeseburgers and Dr. Pepper. And you know what he did? Somehow at this venue, he found a Dr. Pepper, and within 10 minutes, he walks up to my table and sets a cold Dr. Pepper in front of me. So he just has a gift for making people feel comfortable and special.
Well, we got a big show today. We need to talk about an update about Lester's feet. We need to do an update about this new YouTube channel that came out this week. But we're going to focus a little bit after the Osseous segment on what we've seen so far with bucks, and especially mature bucks, and how much antler size they've put on this year. I think it's going to be great dialogue. While we don't have a huge sample across it, both of us are watching several mature bucks that lived from last year. So we're going to tee that up a little bit. But before the Osseous segment, I want to talk about a little bit of, I don't know, it's more important for me to see you kind of expose this side of you to social media that you did this week, because it allows people to see who I've known for almost 20 years now, that people get the wrong idea. Walk us through a little bit of the time you got to spend with your grandson. You posted a couple times on social media, and I'm going to paraphrase, he thinks we're just scouting for deer, or he thinks that, we're just spraying herbicide or stuff like that. Talk a little bit about kind of the full circle of where things have been in your life and getting to spend a week in the side-by-side or tractor with your grandson before, I guess you took him back to Indiana when you all went to the wedding.
We did. We took him back home, and then on the way home from the wedding today, we picked up his brother. So I got my other grandson here this week.
Rotate him this week.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about it. That's got to be so special for you.
Well, I was blessed with one of the best grandfathers a person could ever have. The farm that I own today was my mom's parents. My mom was actually born in the old house that my wife and I used to live in before we just built this new one. And my grandpa, though, he made his grandkids, and he didn't have a lot of grandkids. He had 5 of us, but he made us all feel like we were really special, and the world revolved around us almost. And not that he wouldn't, if we needed corrected, he wouldn't hesitate. He would put us in our place if we needed, but he always did so in a loving way, and you never doubted the love he had for us. And I can just think of many things he did for me, going out of his way. And the thing about it was he never had much money. I mean, I talk about my wife and I being dirt poor when we got married. Well, my grandpa was dirt poor his entire life. He never got out of that, but yet he would somehow still find money to do special things for us grandkids. And he's been gone for a little over 30 years now, and he died on Halloween morning, one year, and I was actually in the deer woods deer hunting that morning, and I still remember coming home from that deer hunt and hearing that he'd passed. Um, but now that I've got grandkids of my own, it just it's come full circle, and I realize that my grandpa's been gone over 30 years, and I still think about him all the time. I still recognize and appreciate that a big reason that I've been successful in life is because of what he did for me, the lessons he taught me. Um, when it comes to politics, I'm pretty outspoken, and he was too. He was conservative as can be, and his views and our goalposts never changed. The left keeps getting more and more radical, but as conservatives, my views are the same that they were 35 years ago when my grandpa was still alive, and he instilled those into me. He's the one that had the guts to speak out when something was not right, like I do sometimes, and not afraid of not caring at all who he offended. The right is right and wrong is wrong. I talked a couple years ago, maybe it wasn't even a couple years ago, probably about a year ago, of I went to try to get hunting permission from this older feller, and he shared with me, once he found out who I was and who I was related to, he shared with me that my grandpa was once his Sunday school teacher. And this gentleman today has a ministry where he collects old Bibles and he ships shipping containers full of old Bibles to other countries. And that guy was in my grandpa's Sunday school class as a kid. And hearing things like that, and then having your own grandkids and realizing that, man, I can have an impact on those kids too. I don't want those kids to remember me for, things I bought them. I want them to remember me for lessons I taught them. And so whenever the opportunity's there, I'm always talking to my grandkids the way my grandpa did to me. I had a good example to learn from, so it's pretty easy for me. And I don't think those boys doubt for a second how important they are to me, just like I never doubted for a second how important I was to my grandpa. And just to be able to spend time with them here on the same farm where I rode around on an old Farmall F20 with my grandpa, and today I've got a cab John Deere tractor with air conditioning. We've taken a giant step up in the equipment on this farm, but still the lessons, the sharing of everything. I'll ride around with my grandsons and just be amazed at some of the things that they know already. Like my youngest grandson, a couple of years ago, we was riding around and on the side by side checking food plots or something, and there was this big, tall, weird plant that I see them all the time. I wasn't sure what it was called. I just called it a weed. And he says, "There's mullein." And I said, "What?" He says, "That plant right there, that's mullein." He said, the Indians used to wipe their butt with it. It's got real soft leaves, So I went back home and I looked up mullein, and sure enough, that's mullein. Here's a little kid that was probably about 7, 8 years old at the time, teaching me things. And it's just, the older you get, the more you appreciate those things. It's probably a good thing I didn't have grandkids when I was 40, because wouldn't appreciate them the way I do now that I'll be 60 here in about 3 weeks. So it's just,
if Wes Delks is listening, Wes doesn't live too far away from your grandkids. Wes, you need to get over there and have Don's grandson show you what mullein is, so the next time you have a code brown out on you can do like the Indians did and not lose a sock.
Yeah, save your socks. But yeah, it's grandkids are special, and
Well, I just
the
thought it
thing of
was
it is,
really neat. And everybody that probably saw that Facebook post, I think you did 2 of them this week, where he was in the tractor, the side by side with you. You know, they immediately, their head goes to that you're teaching them about mature bucks or trying to, and that's probably just part of the conversation, but the conversations that even you and I have go far beyond deer hunting and just about life. And, the stories of having you going around in the same farm as you where you did your grandfather, that's really special. I can relate to that because that's how it was with my grandfather when he first got me into hunting. And just a really, really cool opportunity for people to see a different side of you. I thought it was neat.
well, thank you. A few people recognized that, and even I made a post today after the wedding with a picture of my wife and I with Leon and Katie, and there's a couple people that commented that, on the post that I've made, and how I'm always trying to honor God in my post. And I know that you've been around me long enough to see a change, and I just hope a lot of other people that have known me most of my life or whatever, even I think even if they've only known me for 10 years, they ought to be able to recognize that I'm a different person today than I was 10 years ago. And, 5 years ago, you and I went through a situation, and not to rehash it or nothing, but that was a situation that changed me for the better. It was a difficult situation, but I recognized how valuable friends are. And I've really made a concerted effort since then to make sure that I never take advantage of a friend. I always try to be there for my friends if they need it, and if I can help them in any way. So it's you don't stop maturing when you get to be an adult. I think all the way to death, and even here at 60 years old, I hope that I'm going to be a better person at 65 than I am at 60.
Yeah. Well, speaking of seeing a different side of people, we announced this week the spinoff YouTube channel of Chasing Giants TV. That's it's been in the works for a little bit, but I was stalling. We've talked about it on and off, and you supported it. It was just up to me whether we were going to go full steam with it or when it was going to go. And we made the call to go ahead and do it this week. So it's out there, good, bad, and different. I'm not sure, but seeing a little bit different side of all of this.
And just so everybody knows, Terry has done 99.9% of the work on that. I basically contributed almost nothing. But the thing that gets me, Terry, is I can't figure out why in the world, with all you've got going on, why in the world would you try to start something else?
Well, I'm going to be respectful of this segment and make sure we get to the Osseo bit, but there was actually something that happened a few months ago, and looking back on it, it tees off of exactly what you just talked about, and it's that I have to be a better man today than I was yesterday or that I was 5 years ago. And it was actually while I was flying to Japan, I had Wi-Fi on the plane, and someone sent me just a scathing message about something I'd said on the podcast. And I know it's hard for people to understand, but we don't really remember what we said sometimes on last week's show, much less a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the person really got almost belligerent and hateful with me, and I just said I'll go back and listen to it. I really don't even remember saying it. And he thought he was personally attacked from it, and he wasn't. I wasn't even talking about them, but it really upset me. And because a couple of the things that he said about my integrity and my character, and I'm not perfect, but my wife, when I got back from Japan, I was telling her about it, and she my wife has a way of saying stuff that's very short and to the point, but is very impactful. And she said, you can't live it and have it both ways. You can't have a podcast and put your life out there and then don't want people to know or don't want people to see who you're about. If you're going to put yourself out there, you have to put yourself out there and deal with the good and the bad. And it was a series of events that kind of started. I had this vision of creating another platform, And don't take this the wrong way, Don, but when we talk about things on this podcast, I know that even though people, if they knew you better, they could relate to you. But the easy excuse is I could never do that because I have a full-time job, or I have a house payment, or I have 3 little kids at home. And I always had this vision that said, if we could just rally around all these friends that we have that are doing exactly what we're talking about on this podcast, but they're balancing it with their normal lives, those stories would be pretty cool. And how do we do that? And I always just thought that would be a good way for people to see an application side of everything that we talk about on under the Higgins Outdoors umbrella. So, our land consulting, Real World Wildlife Products, this podcast, Whitetail Master Academy. Those are all going to still be the education part of it. If you want a strategy or education, go to those platforms. But if we can have something that shows how somebody did it on their farm when they're trying to, deal with broken equipment, or, only having 2 hours after work, I just think that's a really cool story. So the whole thing about Chasing Giants TV is just another little spinoff that's balancing real life. And it's not going to be just me. It's hopefully you're on it some, but it's going to be about a lot of other people, especially young business owners like Leon. Leon's on the list, that we can go and talk about their passion and how they wanted to build something. I'm a big fan of the side hustle. And when people try to do something that's either a side hustle or an extra job just to feed a passion that turns into a job and a career, nobody's out there telling those stories in the outdoor industry right now. And I also want this platform to do it. So to make a long story short, we had been talking about this back and forth. I didn't know when I was going to do it. We did some graphic design work, and then an executive at my company, my day job, sends me an email about a week and a half ago, and in writing said almost the same words that character sent me on that flight to Japan. And he questioned my character. And that's about the equivalent of somebody telling Don Higgins that he hunts inside of a high fence. I mean, it rubs me the wrong way. And I said, okay, enough's enough. We're starting this thing, and we're starting it tomorrow. So even though we only have 5 episodes recorded, it was just enough that I said, okay, if people want to really know who I am and the character that I try to portray and how much publicity we can spread towards Lester's feet, that's the ultimate goal. That's why we're doing it. So it was somebody pissing me off about a week ago that said, full steam ahead, we're going to do this. So if you want to say it's out of spite, that's fine. But I'm like you sometimes. Something happens and I put my mind to something, and we're going to do it.
Well, just so everybody knows, I did not know any of that story until just now. I just heard it for the first time like everybody else. But anybody that questions your character obviously doesn't even know you, because I don't think I know a single person who does more for others than you. I mean, everything about your life, you're either helping girls with softball. You don't watch TV every weekend. You got something going.
Yeah.
And it's Lester's feet, for example. If people knew how much behind the scenes red tape you had to go through just to get this thing going, and you did it you made darn sure you wasn't going to take a penny of donated money. You haven't made a penny. You spent countless hours and days of your time all to help others. Anybody that questions your character just doesn't even know you.
So yeah, it was 2 situations that, I know the listeners will say, don't let people get underneath your skin, because the two haters are far outweighed by the people that support us. But it just motivated me. It's like those things every once in a while that just, it irks you enough that somebody's going to question something that just hits you the wrong way. And it's like, okay, I got the fuel that I need. I got the energy that I need. We're going to take this thing and do it. And quite honestly, for about a month, I was just sitting there stewing, say, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to take on something else? Do I really think telling these stories or encouraging guys that have families and full-time jobs and where to keep perspective at and how to set priorities of your faith, your family, your financial obligations while we're doing what we talk about. Do I really want to take that on? And whether it's right or not, these two little small incidences were just enough to say, I'm ready to take on more. Let's pony up and do it. So,
I got something to share with you.
You know how it is. You know how it
is.
Oh,
I know exactly how it is. Once I get pushed to a certain point, I'm going to prove them wrong. But I'll share something with you that I've never shared this with anybody, but you and our listeners are going to hear it for the first time. When I was thinking about starting a podcast and I was coming up with a name, the Chasing Giants name fit so well because I wanted to have two meanings. And we all know the first obvious meaning, we're chasing giant bucks. But a lot of us are also chasing demons. We've got some kind of demon in our past that haunts us to this day. And we're trying to chase off those demons. And your critics that you're describing here are like, I wouldn't call them demons, but they're a negative that you're trying to chase out of your life. And I think every one of us, everybody listening to this has probably got something negative in their past or maybe even going on right now that haunts them. And chasing giants really can have two meanings. And I should have shared this with you years ago because you could have probably come up with a good idea. I've always wondered how we could take that chasing giants theme and have a segment in this podcast where we're talking about how we've dealt with some of the crises in our life or things, because we're all chasing giants one way or another.
Yeah, it's so anyway, two recent events that just fueled the fire. This YouTube channel, like I said, by no means is it a hunting channel. By no means is it really going to be a lot of educational in-depth stuff. Think about it as learn your lessons, your strategy, and have your educational pieces at the podcast and at the Whitetail Master Academy. See how some redneck from Kentucky with his buddies are trying to make it work in between other obligations and getting it done every day on this channel. So, we want this Chasing Giants platform to continue to grow in different outlets. And the more we get these people that support us so much together, I think it just brings together that community too. So if you want to help with this, go find the channel. It's called Chasing Giants TV. If you link off to our social media, you'll be able to find it. There's 5 or 6 videos up there right now. We toured a property that had second-year miscanthus on it a couple days ago. That video's out there, and I built a 9mm with a suppressor on another video. So it's going to be a lot of random stuff. But go like that. Go subscribe to that YouTube channel. If you can do that, that's the biggest favor you can give me, even if you don't watch the videos. Getting that subscription list up a little bit higher so we can play with the YouTube algorithm is going to be the biggest thing you can do to help us. So Chasing Giants TV. And yeah, we'll have Don on there. I'm gonna have Joe Miles on there. I want to have Chris Yates on there. I want to have Harold Monk on there, Chad Sylvester. As we start getting into hunting season and seeing all this, it's going to be a lot of just normal, good people that have a passion for whitetails and are balancing everything to chase it. And I think it's going to be some pretty cool stories.
Yep. Go like and subscribe.
All right, so we'll take a quick break and listen to our friend from Osseo Gear. He just got back from Africa. The guy never stops hunting. He amazes me.
He's got to have his own full-time taxidermist. That guy has absolutely got to have a full-time taxidermist. he kills something every week.
All right, listen up here.
Osseo Gear introduces a premium line of bow hunting gear that is unmatched, pairing nature's finest camouflage with the best technological innovations. Osseo Gear brings whitetail bow hunters the gear they need to be the best at their craft. The unique camouflage mimics the intricate feather pattern of North America's greatest predatorial creatures. Designed for invisibility, built for comfort, and engineered for function. Visit AsioGear.com. That's ASIO Gear.com to start shopping. Asio Gear, prepare to be invisible.
All right, Don. Well, thanks to our friends from Asio Gear for sponsoring the podcast. Don, I got a question for you, and I'm going to tee this up with a quick bullet point or summary. At the end of last year, I knew of 6 mature bucks, and I'm not talking 3-year-olds going to 4, but bucks that I knew were at least 5. Some of them I knew were a little bit older and knew that they were alive. Out of those 6 bucks that I knew lived through the season, I've gotten pictures of 5 of those bucks. So only one of them I haven't located yet. The thing that's the crazy thing to me is not one of them is bigger than they were last year. And in fact, 3 of them are smaller, I believe. The growing season hasn't finished yet, so I can't say for sure. But at least what I can tell does not appear like anything, took a jump from last year, from 5-year-olds and up. This isn't identifying 3-year-olds and what are they doing as 4-year-olds. This is mature bucks. Am I going crazy and overthinking this, or did the drought or some other condition? I mean, that's a pretty big sample size across 2 different states. What are your thoughts on antler growth so far with the data that you have?
Well, over the years, I've noticed that once a buck reaches 4, most of the time he's pretty much as good as he's going to get. It's pretty rare for him to have a big jump in antler growth. I would say definitely over half of them are not ever going to have that big antler growth spurt, from one year to another. But this year, I think it's, even worse than normal. I've just seen the same thing. The mature bucks that I knew from a year ago either didn't put on much, or if they did, it's very little, or maybe it's too early yet to tell. But I didn't see a tremendous growth spurt on anything. The buck that I seen with the best growth spurt so far was a 3-year-old last year, 4-year-old this year, which is pretty common. It's 4 and beyond when those big growth spurts are more rare. But this year does seem to be worse than normal, and I wonder if it's not that drought that the bucks had to deal with for the first at least 2 months, probably 2.5 months of the antler growth cycle, and that's what I attribute it to.
Yeah. And I was hoping we haven't talked about this ahead of time. We haven't even really shared trail camera pictures. We've been so busy, but I keep going back to, maybe one of those 6 bucks would have taken a jump, maybe none of them, but it goes back to that jump that you're seeing from 3 to 4. But that buck is usually the one that gets shot when people aren't managing. And this is why it's so vital to protect. And I talked to somebody about this the other day. It's, we all this time of the year are going through our trail camera list and we're picking the shooters. It's like, this is our shooter. This is our target buck. I'm really challenging people to look at that differently. And instead of saying, here's our shooters, here's the do not shoot bucks. You can shoot any 2-year-old you want, but these 3 and 4-year-olds that are special, those are the ones that are just got to be on the protected list in AAA ball waiting to be called up to the show, And whether or not I end up finding a buck, I mean, granted, one of them is still really big. It's the one I chased last year. He's still big. I mean, it's not that he went down 25 inches, but it's just so rare to have bucks take a jump later on that protecting our 3 to 4-year-olds are so vital.
Yeah, and the right individual bucks is really the key. The buck that I talked about that jumped from 3 to 4 last year's a 3-year-old. He was a 5x5 with really long brows and a sticker off of his right brow tine. And so this year he's a 6x6 with long brows, sticker off the one brow. he made the biggest jump, and he's the one that's got a world of potential. But I recognized last year as a 5x5 with long brows, he probably would have scored 155 or so,
Yeah.
and which is not a super 3-year-old, but it's a pretty good one. He was one of the better 3-year-olds on the property, and there he is. He's the one that blows up. It's fairly easy to recognize a buck with a lot of potential at 3 years old. 2 years yearlings and 2-year-olds are a little bit tougher most of the time. Occasionally, one will come along where he's going to be something. But when they're 3, if they're going to ever be good, you should start seeing it at 3, and
Yeah.
definitely by 4.
Yeah, and by no means did I want to put you on the spot with this question to say what's your buck forecast for this year. I don't think that we've run enough cameras or seen enough intel to do that. That'll come a little bit later in the summer. But it was just an observation. I'm surprised. I guess it's because I'm running a few more cell cameras this year. Normally I don't take the second trip up to Illinois until the first week of September to pull trail cameras to really see that intel, but I'm getting it live feed now from out of state. But I thought it was odd that out of the 6 that I knew about, which 4 of them being in Illinois, 2 of them being here in Kentucky, that I really didn't see much growth, and in fact, a couple of them look like they're going to be a little bit smaller. But protecting that 3 and 4-year-old, it's really the game-changing piece to your management plan.
Right. Yeah, everybody gets wrapped up on what's my target bucks for this year, and you make a great point, Terry. The more important thing is which bucks am I going to protect at all costs this year?
Yep. All right, great dialogue there. Let's get on to the first listener submitted question of the night, and then after we get done that, I want to give a quick update about Lester's feet.
Okay, this one comes from Jimbo Maupin from let me see here. I had something on my screen. From Oliver Springs, Tennessee. He says, Don and Terry, thank you for telling it like it is and always being honest with your audience, which leads me to my question about the food plot seed business. I was recently in a well-known store and a gentleman asked me my opinion on a 3.5-pound bag of clover. This bag of clover was produced by a highly respected company that most serious hunters are familiar with. On the front of the bag is a picture of a famous husband and wife endorsing this product. However, when I looked at the seed tag, 80% of the mix was annual ryegrass. I don't consider myself to be much of an expert, but wouldn't you consider this blend junk? I was just curious as what your thoughts were on the amount of garbage food plot seed being endorsed by experts. Keep fighting the good fight, Jimbo. Well, Jim, this is a subject that I'm pretty well versed in because I've been preaching it for over 15 years with Real World. Learned to read the seed tag, and obviously you know how to read a seed tag, and you picked right up on it. Ryegrass is a cheap filler seed. Rye grain is a great seed to plant for deer, but ryegrass is a cheap filler. And one reason that it's in there, besides the fact that it's cheap, is it is very easy to grow. You could take a handful of ryegrass seed, throw it out in your gravel driveway, and spit on it, and you're going to have green growth in a few days. That's why it's in there, because it looks good. A beginning food plotter goes out and he throws that down and he sees the green growth and he thinks he's really accomplished something, and then all he's got to do is sit there and wait on the big buck to show up. And you bring up the celebrities, and I'm not going to mention names here, but I seen a person in the industry that not long ago was touting that he was preaching how I want to be really careful how I word this. He was preaching how too much seed coating is a bad thing, and it's a waste of seed. Now, he never said seed coating was bad in itself, but excess seed coating was a bad thing, and he was right. He was actually preaching a good thing. Well, now this person got hooked up with a different seed company than he was promoting before. And now all of a sudden, excess seed coating is a fantastic thing. It helps with germination and all this. Well, every company, I made a social media post about this week as well. Every company has got to consider how they are going to present their product to the public, to their customer base. And no matter what method they use, it costs a company some money for the exposure. Celebrity endorsements work. That's why some companies use them. People follow these celebrities and they see that celebrity planting something, and by golly, it must be good if that guy's planting it. So I'm going to plant the same thing. But when you really think about it, who pays for those celebrity endorsements? Are very expensive, and who ends up really paying for that? It's the consumer. And a lot of times, the company that has those celebrity endorsers, they have to cut corners elsewhere. So they cheapen up what's inside the bag so that they can put the right person's picture on the bag. And it works. It works. You can't bash them because it works. But you can say that as the consumer, we should be a little more educated, and it's really simple. Just forget the front of the bag, what's on it. It doesn't matter if it's a real world bag or any other seed company's bag. Forget what's on the front of it. Flip that bag over and read that little tag, that little analysis tag. And that little analysis tag will tell you everything that you need to know about what's inside that bag, jug, whatever it is that you're buying. And Jimbo obviously knows how to read a seed tag, and I wish everybody did, because if everybody did, these companies that are doing that would see sales plummet. Now, there'd still be some people that would fall for the celebrity endorsement, but if you just knew how to read a seed tag, it's very, very easy to pick out the best products.
All right. Well, I changed my mind. We're going to do the second question before we do the Lester's feed update. I'm going to put it up on the screen.
Okay. The next one comes from Parker Rediker from Madison, Kansas. He says, "Hey, Don and Terry, question is for both of you. I know crossbow is a forbidden word, but if you were guaranteed to shoot 5 200-inch bucks for the rest of your life with a crossbow versus 0 200-plus inch bucks for the rest of your life, or say even none over 180 with a compound, would you consider it? The pro crossbow crowd gets my blood boiling when they say it's the same thing as a compound. My buddy's 5-year-old killed a buck with a crossbow. That's proof it's not the same. Like to see his 5-year-old draw my Matthews. Thanks for a great podcast, and hope to fire Don up a bit. God bless." Well, Parker, you picked the wrong day to try to fire me up, because I'm in a pretty good mood today. And everybody thinks I'm anti-crossbow. I am not anti-crossbow. What I am is I'm anti-crossbow for able-bodied people in archery season. And these crossbow guys that, they think, they're crossbow fanatics. If they're crossbow fanatics, how come they're not using them during firearm season? Most of the people using crossbows are just trying to kill deer the easiest legal way they possibly can. And that's their choice. It's an ethical thing, but it's their choice. If it's legal, who am I to tell them they can't do it? But my opinion is that crossbows should not be legal for able-bodied people in regular archery season. Now, I think that there should be an age limit, like, say, 60, 65 years old, people with health issues that's got a doctor's note or whatever. Absolutely, let those folks use a crossbow. But when you got a 25, 30-year-old guy out there with biceps the size of my waist and he's got to use a crossbow, well, come on. That's not necessary. And that's my opinion on the whole crossbow thing. I want to stress I am not anti-crossbow. So moving on to your question, would I go to a crossbow knowing that I would shoot 5 more 200-inch bucks, or stick with my compound knowing I would never shoot another buck over 180? You know what? I think I would just stick with my compound. How I kill my deer means more to me than the size of them. Now, with that said, I want to kill the biggest bucks I possibly can. Don't get me wrong. But if the method was not important to me, I would not have given up gun hunting decades ago. And I'm not against gun hunting. I'm not at all. I think it's necessary to keep the deer herds in check and everything. I just am not it's just not something that appeals to me. I don't look down on anyone for gun hunting, but if the method of how I kill my bucks was not important, I would be gun hunting. So I'm afraid I would just have to stick with my compound and leave it as it is. And there's going to be guys that shoot recurves and longbows that say, well, what's the difference? You got training wheels on your bow, and the thing of it is, every one of us has to draw the line somewhere. And the sad thing is that too many deer hunters allow a bunch of shady, crooked politicians to tell them where their line is. And that's what you're doing when you go and you do anything that the law allows. You've allowed politicians to tell you where your ethical line is.
Well, that's not up to us to tell them either. That's
Right.
that's
Absolutely.
that's the point you're making. It's not for a podcast host or a politician to tell you what your decision needs to be. That's up to you.
Right.
But I got injured really, really bad and had to go through the whole medical waiver. That was back when Illinois, you couldn't use a crossbow unless you had a waiver, and you had to have an affidavit signed by a doctor, and that's not easy. I mean, it was a big hoops to jump through to get a crossbow permit for the state of Illinois, and after the accident, I had it. And the turning point for me to go back was I caught myself actually saying one time, and this is being overly transparent with a lot of people, that it could backfire on me, but that's okay. I caught myself mid-sentence one time saying, well, if I could have used a crossbow for the previous 10 years, my wall would be completely different. After I'd taken a couple bucks with a crossbow, I actually caught myself saying, well, if I could have done this for the last 10 years, hunting out of state in Illinois before the EHD breakout, my wall would look a whole lot different. I caught it coming out of my mouth, and it was, what is wrong with you? And that's when I just started working my tail off and talking to the medical team and therapy, and to where I could get back to use a compound. And I'm not saying I won't ever go back or I won't ever do it again. It's just I've set a goal for me personally about what I want to do with the weapon it is. Might not be for everybody, but that was the turning point back for me. I don't know if I ever told you that story, but I actually caught it coming out my mouth. And sometimes when you say something and you hear yourself say it, it changes perspective. And yeah, I still gun hunt, believe it or not. I'm not against a crossbow at all. I'm against how they use a crossbow in the season, and what that effect changes on what deer are shot and when. So,
well,
I don't think
that answers the question.
I don't think either one of us would get upset about that question today, though. Anyway.
No, and for me, who has always had good health, I've never had any issues drawing a compound. Somebody like me shouldn't be telling other people. I don't know people's physical abilities and their situation. I don't want anybody to think that I'm the one that should be dictating to everybody else what they should shoot. If it's legal, it's their choice. I just don't like allowing politicians to set my ethical boundaries.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to give a quick update about Lester's Feet. I posted actually it was in when I announced that the new YouTube channel, Chasing Giants TV, was going to be released, and I said that one of the objectives of it was to draw more attention to Lester's Feet. Somebody actually commented and said we haven't talked about it a lot on the podcast here recently, and wanted to know what was going on. And part of that's my fault. I should do a better job at making sure we check in and let people know, because I know so many of our listeners are donors. So there has been a small change, and that is with the way HIPAA, which is the things that you have to sign when you go to the doctor about privacy. And HIPAA did not change, but a lot of privacy laws in different states have changed. And we were warned this with our attorney about a year ago. And honestly, we're still not completely sure what we're allowed to talk about and what we're not allowed to talk about. So when a family comes to us and says, "Hey, we got this, situation," they apply, we award them. It's great to share that story and ask for prayer. But there's different situations that we have to be careful of as their journey navigates with that health issue, where that might change their willingness to have their situation public. So to be honest with you, we don't know at this point how much we're going to be able to talk about it, even when a family says, feel free to share a story. There's people that are a whole lot smarter than us on the legal side that are going to help navigate us on what we can share and what we can't. The other problem that this created was the way we hold data that families submit. So the board's assurance to all the people that donate is that we vet this out, and we're not a welfare system. We're helping people by paying their bills directly to a vetted out situation of a family that needs help. Well, when this documentation is provided to us, we found out that we weren't necessarily covering our rear ends as much as we should have by holding this sensitive information. So in the last 3 months, we've had to work with the attorneys to develop a whole new privacy statement that the donors are going to have to sign, and about ready to release a whole new website that's going to hold this data. So for those of you who are asking, is Lester's Feet still going? Are you still helping people? Yes. Are we talking about it? No, because we don't know yet where all this is going to land with these privacy statements, and states have different laws to comply with all of that. The bad news is it shouldn't be this hard to help people. And we thank everybody for trusting us with their donations. We are still cognizant of our goal. That's every dollar that comes in goes back out to families. But we just, for the time being, can't be as public about what we're doing in the family situation specifically. When this all gets kind of ironed out a little bit, hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit more again. But, those little videos that I would play on the podcast back in the day, everybody really likes seeing where their money goes. And I get it. But you have to understand the situations of these families are very fluid. So we want to respect their privacy as much as anything. So keep praying for us. It's always a challenge navigating all of this kind of stuff. I never thought when we started this journey I would be playing attorney as much as I would helping families, but that sure seems like where it is today.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier. People don't see all the time you devote to helping others behind the scenes.
So again, thanks. If you have any questions, just reach out to us. But the biggest way we find the families that meet our criteria is the listeners of this podcast, making them aware of us in their communities. We do get a lot of requests from people who are just looking for welfare, and that's not what we're about. But if you know of a family that needs help, please reach out to us and we'll do our best to make that happen. So here's the third question of the night.
This one comes from Jay Walls Jr. from Danville, Indiana. He says, Dear Don and Terry, I have a couple of questions I hope you guys can shed some light on. Don, you and I both built homes around the same time. I believe our homes were finished within a month of each other. My question is, what steps are you taking to get a nice looking yard? Part of our contract was the builder had to grade and seed the yard. I know they planted tall fescue and it's patchy in some spots, and my wife absolutely loves it. My second question is, what are your thoughts on tree transplanting? I'm wondering if there's a good time or a bad time to do that because I find a lot of saplings on my home farm. I feel I could use in a different spot to help the deer herd. Hope you both have a great deer season and God bless, Jay. Well, Jay, you and I picked a terrible time to start new yards. My yard is still patchy to this day. I've got places I've seeded 5 or 6 times. It just seems to me like that grass seed does not stay viable in the soil very long. You either get good growing conditions right out of the gate when you plant it, or you don't. And if you don't, it's you got to reseed. So I'm going to reseed again this fall for, I don't know, probably the sixth time in some areas, and it's all because of the last fall was super dry. Um, and it was hard to. Fall is usually a good time to start grass, but it was super dry. This spring was the same way. It was super dry. Even starting clover, frost seeding clover, I did some of that this spring, as well as frost seeding some grass in the bare areas in my yard, and actually seeded my yard 2 different times. Once to frost seed it, and then once after things warmed up again to try to get it started. But it was just so dry, neither one worked. The interesting thing is that here in July, we started getting rain. They're about the 1st of July, and my clover absolutely exploded. That frost seeded seed that I'd put down this early in the spring back in March, it absolutely exploded. I got a fantastic stand of clover that 30 days ago I did not have. The yard, on the other hand, that's not the case. So just keep plugging away, and what you need is ideal conditions, rain, really, moisture right after you plant, and warm temperatures to go along with it. So sometime in September, I'll be doing it again. Your other question was about trees and transplanting trees on your farm. And, I had the tree nursery for many years, and had a tree spade on a skid loader where I could transplant trees. And I transplanted a lot of trees that were growing just wild, volunteer trees, trees in the woods, whatever, however you want to look at it. And my experience with that is a very poor way to go about establishing trees. Just the root system is not near as dense in a tree that's growing like that. Nursery grown trees will have a lot more roots in the root ball that you would dig up, where a tree growing in the wild that just started from, say, a seed that a squirrel plants or something, it's going to have roots that are probably deeper, but there's just not near as many of them. And when you dig that tree, you cut those roots, and it just doesn't transplant near as well. All the trees that I transplanted like that, I'm talking every single one of them did poorly for a number of years before, if they snapped out of it at all, it took many years, and a lot of them just slowly died. So I don't recommend you do that. You might as well just spend the money on good trees out of the gate, and you're going to be way ahead, unless you are 20 years old and got your whole life ahead of you. But for a guy like me that doesn't, that's a terrible way to do it. I want to throw something else out while we're talking about trees. This week I met with Jay Gingrich Tree Farm. Jay and I met with a gentleman from Ohio, a apple and chestnut expert, and Jay is working on some things with Gingrich Tree Farm that in the next couple of years he's going to have. He's got some new things going. He's going to have some new apple varieties. I believe he's going to start offering bare root trees shipped by UPS so that a lot more people can get them. And they're going to be varieties that are proven. In fact, I think Jay and I are going to get Steve Shields working on a video to promote this once everything comes together. But this gentleman that Jay and I met with this week, he knows his apple trees and his chestnuts as well. Super knowledgeable, and he's got a very unique story to tell that we're going to document.
All right. Great news. Happy for Jay. His business has really grown. I know a lot of our podcast listeners have supported him. He's not only just selling trees, but he's doing a lot of habitat work also. So he's been a good close friend of the podcast, a supporter of Lester's Feet, and just a good friend for a lot of years to both of us. So congratulations on that, Jay. We can't wait to see what's going on. I need to get a hold of Jay and put in my tree order this year, because last year I waited too late and he was already sold out by the time I got there. So if you're needing trees, make sure you reach out to Jay Gingrich at Gingrich Tree Farms. The link is in the description below on YouTube, and you can find the other information on Don's Chasing Giants website. So need to get with him if you want trees. All right, let's get the next question up on the screen.
Okay, this one comes from Wade Johnson from Minneapolis, Minnesota. He says, Don and Terry, thank you for sharing your extensive knowledge of hunting mature whitetail bucks. More important, thank you for putting yourselves out there as devout followers of Jesus Christ and for sharing the gospel in all you do. Like many in the upper Midwest, I'm blessed to hunt in agricultural areas that also feature many creeks, ponds, cattail swamps, and small lakes. These waterways often result in major funnels or pinch points of between 20 yards and 50 yards. My questions have to do with whether you think hunting these major funnels would be effective for mature bucks. My thinking is mature bucks may travel said funnels at night and perhaps during peak rut, but likely would be hesitant to use these funnels at other times. My thinking is mature bucks would recognize their vulnerability in such spots, and if they did use them, they'd likely move through rapidly, thus limiting archery shot opportunities. Have you had success hunting mature bucks in such funnels? Any tips for hunting these funnels effectively? Any times to avoid hunting such funnels? Thank you for considering my questions. Well, Wade, you describe a very unique but a very deadly situation for tagging mature bucks, and because you talk about these various water sources, those water sources are an ideal opportunity for a place for you to allow your scent to go. So anytime you're hunting deer, you want your scent to be blowing in a direction where you're very unlikely to have deer encounter it. Well, obviously, if you got a lake or whatever, I've flown over Minnesota and I've seen all the lakes you guys got up there. Those deer are not going to be out in the lake smelling your scent. Just fantastic opportunities. Tight funnel. A lot of times, a buck is super sensitive. A lot of times they won't come in unless they've got the wind pretty much to their advantage. But again, that water allows you to set up right at the edge of the water, so that the buck coming through can just almost scent it all, but he's not going to scent you sitting there on the edge of the water. So I think it's a good opportunity. The thing you got to remember is you're going to educate some deer. You need a bunch of these funnels, and you need to stay out of them until you know you have a target buck that's using that funnel. You could educate a deer when he's 2 years old, and 3 years later when he's 5, he still remembers the encounter that he had with you or your scent 3 years earlier. And that's what I think one of the big things that most deer hunters never give enough credit to is how long a buck will recall a bad situation that, or a near death experience at the hands of a hunter, and it will change the way he travels through a property forever. And so when you're setting up on these funnels, my advice would be to just very discreetly get trail cameras in there, hang those trail cameras high where they're not going to be detected. Use cell cams if possible, so you're not in there jacking with that camera all the time, and don't even hunt it at all until you know that there's a target buck using it. Now you can use the same place, same time theory, or same time, same place theory from 1 year to the next. That's fantastic to hunt a funnel area, but don't just go in there because it's a good stand site and just plop yourself down, not knowing if there's even a buck you want to shoot coming through. Now, if you're not real picky about what you shoot, and that's a totally different story, but we're talking about hunting mature bucks here, which you were very specific about. Just be very careful about how much pressure you put on those funnels.
This is the biggest step we've taken in reducing vibration and sound since 3D damping. What will my new setup do for me that my last year setup did not? Matthews pioneered damping. We own silence. We own stealth.
All right, Don. Well, here's the last question of the night. I think this is a good one to end on.
This one comes from Trevor Pomeroy from Fargo, North Dakota. He says, "Hey, Don, this question is more so directed towards you. You often say that you regret not spending time with your family in your younger days because you were instead focused and putting almost all of your time towards hunting. Do you still regret it now, knowing where you are and how many people you have brought to God, or at least opened their hearts to the Holy Spirit? Thank you guys for everything you do, especially sharing the gospel. Have a blessed day, Don and Terry. Prayers for the both of you." Well, Trevor, you bring up a very interesting question. And the first thing I should probably point out was I regret spending a lot more time with my girls when they were little, but I did spend a lot of time with them. I
Yeah.
just wish it was more. And I can honestly say that, we live in a small town. Both my girls were in classes of, there was probably maybe 30, 35 kids in their classes. And I can honestly say that they were both really involved in various activities. I don't think there was another father in either one of their classes who attended more school functions than I did. I mean, I was there every time I possibly could. Sometimes I had to work second shift in the evenings and I missed some things, but when it was at all possible, I was there. I did spend time with my kids, so I don't want it to sound like I don't at all. But I think as we get older and we look back, we always, I mean, if you got any kind of a good heart at all, you're always going to wish you'd done more. And that doesn't mean you didn't do a good job. But, I appreciate the question because I think to take this kind of in a different direction, I think God put this passion in my heart. I know He did when I was young. And I think he'd seen what I was going to do with it. He sees the future. He knows what's going to happen, and I think that he laid the course for what Terry and I are doing right here, right now, tonight. And I don't regret that I spent so much time in the deer woods. It's just that I wish that I was there. There was a few times when I did go deer hunting that I could have, like at Christmas events or Thanksgiving. I would be there for the meal and all that, but I was gonna take advantage of the evening hunt as well. So, 2 in the afternoon or whatever, family was there. All right, see you. I'll be back at dark. I'm running out to the tree stand here for at least the last 2 hours, and it's things like that that I kind of wish I'd set a better example for those kids and showed them how important family was. I think they realize today how much they mean to me and how important they are to me. I think they probably always did too. But it's easy to look back with regret and have regrets and wish you would have done some things different. Even if you was the best father in the world, I think you would still look back and think, well, man, there's that one time that I missed my son's baseball game or something. I wish I would have been there. And that's more what I was getting at. So I hope I cleared that up a little bit.
Yeah, I love the question. I love the dialogue because it fits right in with what I want to do with this new YouTube channel, to be honest with you. I mean, we're all sitting here with this passion. We wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you didn't want to learn more or be intrigued about deer hunting at whatever level you're at. But all of that time, the money comes with giving up something. And how do we balance all of that? And everyone's in a different perspective. And I think it's okay for us to have hobbies. I think it's okay for us to have, passion to go do a sport, whether it's fishing or golf or whatever. But balancing what's important and like I said before, your faith, that's got to be number one. If our faith is questioned or compromised, then the rest of the foundation isn't there to work off of. Your personal faith with Christ has got to be where it needs to be. Then you can take that to your family and be the Christian leader that you need to be in your household. And then you have to build in the financial obligation, your career, your job. And, are you gonna not buy your kid school clothes because you're taking an elk hunt or something like that? All of this is a balance. And I want this new project to do exactly what you just said. And that is just encourage people that no matter how busy you are, you can still find time to do some of it, and you can still do it and be an encouragement and show other things. So I'll be honest with you, that question right there in your response is right along the same lines of what I had envisioned of Chasing Giants TV being. And I hope people enjoy it. And there'll be a lot of nonsense. And I told you when we first started talking about it, I was like, it might have me smoking a Boston Bud on the smoker one day. Why? Because I need to do it because of a family obligation and that balance behind it. Because I think everybody lives the same kind of, luckily I have a wife that doesn't say a word. What I want to do, she usually is very supportive of it. I know everybody's not in that case, but having a wife that's so supportive and being able to kind of navigate so much of this, as busy as I am, I think that's a fun story to talk about, and I hope people will be engaged with it.
I agree 100%. Without my wife's support, I would never have accomplished a quarter of what I have. And if I could share a story from earlier today, we'd picked up my oldest grandson and we went out to eat on the way home, and we're sitting there at the restaurant, and my grandson's 12 years old, and out of the blue, he says to me, he says, "Grandpa, who do you hate more, Obama or Biden?" And it was an opportunity for me to share with him that I don't hate anybody. I disagree with their politics. I disagree with a lot of their position on a lot of different issues, but that doesn't mean we hate them. And it was a perfect opportunity, a teaching moment. And guys, our kids are going to remember things like that. And that's why it's so important for us to be there for our families. We can become workaholics, we can become huntaholics if you want, where we spend every waking minute in the woods. And it's that balance that we got to strike, because we're shaping the future of those kids' lives.
Yeah. All right. So what do you got planned this coming week, Don?
Well, I've got a crew, actually Chasing Giants listeners, a crew from Ohio coming in to build a pole building for me tomorrow morning. And they'll be here I think they're going to come in 2 hitches. I think they're going to come and frame it up this week and then come back next week and put the metal on. But I'm going to guess most of my time is going to be tied up. It's supposed to be hot as can be. I'm probably going to be the water boy as much as anything, keeping the cooler full of ice cold water for these guys and running around getting whatever they need.
You need to take that barn fan down to the lower shed and have it where they can step into the shade and get out of that sun, because I think this week's weather is going to be pretty warm. So I want to come back next week and tee up a conversation about terminating or getting ready to plant fall plots. I think we're on that verge where we talk about it before. We're late to the spring and early to the fall. And based on the amount of real world orders that's come through in the last 5 days, everybody's going to be wanting to plant here in the next week. And I want to come back and talk about preparing your fall plots and then when to pull the trigger, because both of us are probably going to be spraying and preparing here, but we're not going to be planting for a little while. So let's tee that up for next week. Next week's show, I'm going to be chasing giant fish off the coast of Destin. So Austin Razor and I are leaving Wednesday night, and we're going to be on charter boat fishing trips for 3 days and going out there chasing giant red snapper. So if you want to see some of that stuff, watch the YouTube channel, and I'll give you an update when we next week. But I don't fly back till Sunday night late, so we're gonna have to record with me down there the next week.
Well, I hope you guys have fun. There's no way I'm getting out there in that water. I can't swim. I don't want nothing to do, especially when you can't even see the land. I'll just stay with my feet on the shore.
I'm not as worried about seeing the land as I am the size sharks that we end up seeing or hooking onto while we're out there. There's no way I'm ever getting back into the ocean after seeing what I've seen off the coast.
You can have it all. I'll stick to the whitetail woods.
Well, please go out and subscribe to the Chasing Giants TV channel. We hope and appreciate any support you can give us there. The sooner we get up in subscriptions on that, it lets us navigate and do a couple more cool things. I apologize in advance. It is not going to be high quality production to the scope of Steve Shields, but that's not the intent. So we appreciate everybody's support. We'll see you next week.
God bless everyone. Have a great week.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo, Via Farm Real Estate Company, 360 Hunting Blinds, Victory Chevrolet, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Novix Tree Stands, Gingerich Tree Farm, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, and Vortex Optics. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.